Okay, so part 2 of this, we're going to make some collage paper to make up the character. And I've just had a rummage around the studio for some different wet and dry materials. So I've got some acrylic gouache, and we've been working in browns, and I quite like the browns. So I might go with burnt sienna and sky blue. And burnt sienna is brownish, orangey brownish. Orange and blue are opposite on the colour wheel, so we've got a complementary pair here. I could add a bit of white and a bit of black if I wanted a tint or a shade. I've got some pan pastel here, which is very soft. I've got some walnut drawing medium with a bit of water in a tiny spray bottle. I've got some wax crayons that I can use as a bit of a resist. What colours have I got on the go? So I could get a blue. I've got a white. Now sienna in wax might be just an ask too far, particularly these wax crayons, but I can find a brown. Is there an orange? Of red. These are like your cheap crayons. There's a bit of orange. I'll throw it in there. Okay, I've got top of a tin just to use as a tiny palette for my acrylic gouache, because I know you can add a bit of water and it livens it back up. I've got my brown colour pencil that I was using to draw with anyway, and I found these two Pit Pastel pencils which I can use. So pick your colours. I'm going to go for a complementary set. You could use watercolours, you could use acrylic, doesn't really matter. Just have a rummage around your kit, see what you've got and try and get the same colours in different wet and dry materials. Okay, right, so I've got a pot of water and I've got a brush, and without thinking too much, I'm just gonna pop a, looks like that was sienna on there already, a tiny bit. This acrylic gouache I find is lasting me really well, because you don't need much, it goes quite far. So tiny bit. Don't know if I will use black, but I probably will use white. Let's have a think. So we've got a check, haven't we? That's the easiest fabric description, because I want to make a page full of fabric for this character. So I've got a check, and if you did check, and remember, sort of keep those lines lively and think that, you know, you've got quite a round body there. Now you can't see white on white, and you especially can't see it on the video, but I'm thinking that this wax crayon will give me a bit of resist, and it's dry if I use a wet on top of there. So I'm going to come in with a bit of sienna. Now that sienna is quite saturated, so I'm just going to dull down with a blue. And it makes quite a rich brown. You don't need much at all. Just a bit more blue, I think. Too blue. So because they're opposites on the colour wheel, they cancel each other out. So they'll desaturate each other really nicely, and you end up with really rich colours. Right, that's nice. brush is loaded. My checks are somewhere on there. I've got water on my brush, and I'm just gonna more water than paint, I think, is the trick. Get some tissue and just tonk it back. I can start to see some really lovely checks, and I can introduce a few swishes of colour here and there. And let's do some extra ones, like it's coming down his arm. Again, it's so hard to see, so a lot of this is guesswork until you actually put your paint on, see what you got. Might do another bit. So I'm going to fill this page up with different textures that we can use in our collage, and by mixing the wet and the dry it will give me obviously different effects. So I think I've got material for the jacket here. I want something quite soft for the hat, so I thought this pan pastel might be quite nice. So it kind of gives like moleskin-y type vibe. That might look a bit too soft on its own, but it's giving us different textures, and if we can describe the different fabrics with different textures, I think that's a good collection of collage materials to have. Right, this time I'm gonna use my acrylic gouache just as a wash. I'm thinking trousers now, and I think I want that a little bit darker. So tiny bit of black, you like don't even squeeze it out, just dip your brush in and just start to shade it down in a lively way on the paper. So I've almost dry brushed that on top of the wet, and then a bit of walnut medium spray. I'm just going to move that because it's going to spray onto there, if it's going to spray at all. Must have a little blockage. Yep. So I may as well use that in some way. And then dip my brush in, if it fits in. Get some splatters on the go. These look like fleecy warm trousers to me. While I've got that medium on my brush, I'm just gonna introduce it to some of the checks we've done for his coat, just to kind of introduce the colours, because it's just such a lovely colour brown, I think, that one. character. So we've got jacket, we've got trousers, we've got hat. I don't know if that's going to be enough for hat. Let's give that a bit more texture. Not sure what this is. This is spare. It's always good to have spare. We haven't got tie yet, have we? So, where was that blue crayon? Let's, I don't know if I'll have a brown tie or a lighter tie, but we can work that wax on top. Or we can have we could do blue, brown, blue, brown. You get the gist. We're starting to build up like a little wardrobe of textures. So, move that out of the way. Just tonk that dry. To one side. Now, in my drawer somewhere, I hopefully have to hand So I've just turned my desk upside down trying to find my cutting tool. Now I've got the usual gadgets, scalpels, craft knife and small scissors, but I had treated myself to, I think it's called a gyro cutter, which I was going to show you this month, but obviously not because I've hidden it somewhere, and no doubt I'll find it tomorrow once I've uploaded and finished this film. But anyway, I can use any one of these gadgets. Smaller scissors are always handier for collage cutting, I find, rather than big scissors, and these knives are just as good in terms of, compared to the gyro cutter, they haven't got the maneuverability, but a nice sharp blade is what you need. Now, I always like to make my collage on another piece of paper. So just stick your material collage paper to one side for the moment. And let's get Ratty back. Now, can we see Ratty under there? Just about, which is quite handy. You might not be able to see him, but believe me, he's here. So I can just see him enough that I can get his outline, and I'm very lightly just catching the shape of him. And that's all you need. No detail, just the shape of all the different elements. Now, of course, I could have made his legs a bit longer at this point, but I quite like his enforced short legs and his barely there feet. That was a paw, wasn't it? And there was a thumb, and there was a tail. Something like that. Shapes. And that was the eye. And the hat came in. I can't quite see the ear. So let's have a look. So if it's handy for you, I've done an outline of this particular Ratty, which you can have a go at collaging, as well as obviously your own design as well. So I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want a harsh outline around everything. Okay, that should get me started. I think there was a tie there, wasn't there? And a bit of a collar. And I've got his teeth. That line is wrong. Let's just get rid of that so it doesn't confuse us. Right, that'll do me. Can you see that? Yes, you can. I made a cup of coffee in my search for gadget that has gone missing. It's annoying, I can see it in my mind's eye, but yeah, it's just not coming to me. Right, okay, so I can pop this up the side there, pop that to the side. This is my collage paper. I need some Grit stick. Okay, so we're basically going to cut out from this collage paper, stick onto here, and then I'll stick to keep safe into the sketchbook. So, right, what I'd like to collage first is the biggest part of his jacket, which I'm just going to take a bit of a punt at. So you could draw this if you wanted to, or you could just go with checking the lines as you draw with your scalpel, basically. And just pop it out as it goes. And it doesn't matter if you're too big or too short at this point in terms of fitting it onto your template, because you're going to trim as you go and you're going to patch it, and because you don't want one piece that kind of does all the work, you need several pieces. That'll make sense in a moment. So I'm thinking, oh, that's not too bad. That kind of goes there. I might scoot that corner off a little bit, make that a bit curved. How does that work? Needs to come more in. That'll do me. So that piece can go down, and that's like an anchor piece, and you can work on top of that. So a bit of glue in, bit of stick in. Okay. We need a little bit for the arm now. So let's have a look. Could go with either or. And I might go with the warmer one. And looking at the shape I've got, it's a curve and then a straight line. So I go curve, pop that up so I can see it, and straight line-ish. Pull that out, pop that on. Let's have a look. Not too bad. What I can do now is just trim to the shoulder, trim to the cuff. And because it's a little bit of a warmer brown, it's gonna jump forward in front of that cooler brown, just ever so slightly. Okay, let's go for hat. Well, that's a kind of V shape and a dome. So, V shape and a dome. And we were saying earlier that there's not much depth to a flat cap, but there's some lumps and bumps. And that's the shape I've got. Let's see how that would fit. It's a bit high. So coming in with the scissors, giving it a little trim. That'll do me. Okay, we need that but darker now. So I've got some of that left. So what I could do is darken with my pencil. That sort of shape. And then leave a little space around it so it's lighter. So that's like the rim of it. And its hair actually comes over that, so I'll scoop it up and around. Let's see how this works. Bit too big, bit too much of an angle. Needs more of a curve. I've lost my highlight, not to worry. I could leave a bit of space and chop that bit off. That's it. Right, trousers. That was this, wasn't it? Let's just have a quick slurp. Right, trousers. They are, let's go for both legs. Bit wobbly, very wide, wobbly. Scooped around that way. And then we can hide this underneath the jacket, ideally. Much too much. So just want to cut off but leave enough to hide underneath the jacket. And I wanted to distinguish between the front leg and the back leg. So I'm making the back leg shorter. So I've got that kind of shape. I'm just going to get a bit of that bagginess in. That's better. Okay. Might be able to sneak it under there. Shouldn't have stuck it all the way down. Right, sneaking it under. There we go. Okay, I want a slither of check jacket down here and then a darker shadow. So let's go, that's the darker side, so it kind of arcs around, there's a point and it goes up to the neck. Much too fat for what I need, so I just need a tiny slither which gets chunkier as it goes to the neck. So chop that off. Might need another little bit. Sticking to my fingers. Just need a little bit up here, which, that's nice. It's nice, it's a slightly different tone. I just want to take that point off. Like that. Right, we need something for the tie, which I've got a couple of options. Quite like this one with the orange. So the tie scoots out and then around the neck, down the tummy, give it a little shape like that. Oh yes, look at that. So just trim that top. Peel that corner up if I can. Pop his tie in. Just going to take that corner off. Right, I need something to describe the colour of the jacket. What have we got? What we got left? This could be our extra bit. Might be too dark. Might be too dark. So what else have we got? Let's have a look. Orange would be too much. I haven't used these pencils. That's too dark. And too dark. Quite like this undercolour here. And I quite like this. we might just need a bit of mucky water. Let's see. Something like that. This white is too white and that's too dark, so a bit of mucky water, give it a little tonk to soften it. Right, and what sort of shape are we after? So that one goes, might be better with the scissors because it's wet. A knife doesn't like wet paper. Scissors are much better. So, kind of want it curves around the neck like that. Let's just check that curve. Yeah. To there. And then come in about there for the lapel. Might be a bit much. Let's have a look. Oh, I don't know, you know. Just a little bit long. But nearly there. I quite like how this sort of changes the character again. Okay, so I reckon the face and the shoes and the tail I will describe with pencil just as I've done on the sketch. Okay. So what I can do now is cut this out. I'm actually going to cut the tail off here and add it back on when I pop it in the sketchbook. And I'm going to take the opportunity to curve that shoulder a little and cut into that collar a little. And what I can do is keep the white colour of the shirt, but cut the head off because I can redraw that. I can redraw the shoes. So we've ended up with almost like a potato type shape. And I want the hat. So this is just cheap pad of paper from Poundland, which it feels like printer paper. It's that sort of quality, lack of quality I should say, but that works in my favour in doing things like this because it's so easy to cut, it's easy to see through if you're sort of tracing the character as I just did earlier. Right, so all debris goes on the floor, out of the way for now. new page of the sketchbook. Oops, he's drunk. I still want his feet to just be squished on. I need a bit of space for his tail. Pop that on. There we go. And then with my brown pencil, as I used before to sketch him, what I'm going to do is, so what you can do is once you've got it stuck into your sketchbook, you can then start to redraw your little vole character and shade in just exactly the same as we did here, noticing where it's slightly darker or where you've got the detail or the direction of fur, and start to overlay the shadow on top of the collage. Start to draw in your character, but rather than draw a line for his head to fit it in, what you want to do is fur along what would be the line, so you don't have to describe and you don't have to hide an outline as you draw it. Okay, and what you should end up with is a couple of versions of the same character, and you'll have a preference to which one you like. And it all starts from a bit of inspiration, putting your own spin on it, then seeing if you can bring it to life with a bit more colour and obviously a bit more collage. So as you're drawing this head, my video just cut out, so I'm just going to sketch here to explain what I did. You'll see that as I stuck the collage on, I'm just going to draw it real rough for you, I then started to fur along the outline. Well, there is no outline, but the line that would be the outline. And what you can do is use the printable as a bit of a reference, or even trace it from underneath and start to add his teeth, and then his eye lines up with his nose. It's a little bit darker, and then the ear, and then you can pop the collaged hat on as you see fit. Draw his ear, and you can draw that as an outline, but then when it comes back to the fur, you kind of want to tap 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 the fur along, just exactly as we did earlier with the other drawing. And so this would be your third water vole, and you're kind of getting used to the shapes that you're making, and it might be that you start to get braver with the different decisions that you're starting to make, so it really really is your own little character. Oops, didn't mean to draw over his eye there. So I'm doing this very quickly and sketchily, but so once you've got your collage stuck down, you would then work his head back in with the brown pencil, and then, as I was saying earlier, start to shadow in the darker areas. And I even shadowed over the tie because it felt too bright white and too orange and too blue, and I kind of wanted to keep that harmony of browns going. And to get my dark darks, I used a dark blue pencil over the brown, and then brown over the blue, and that just stops you reaching for the black so often. And I did the same with the nose and the eyes and the inner ear as well, and it gives a chromatic dark rather than just going for a flat black, and it just makes it a wee bit more interesting. And with the tail, you want to fluff down the shape of the tail rather than draw an outline of the tail this time. And so what you'll end up with is these 3 characters, and you, as I say, you might have a preference to which one you like, but remember the very first one was you warming up, and you might see that your lines are a bit stiffer, that maybe you've elongated it a bit too much, and then as you go on and on, you start to get a sense of shape and form, much more so than you did on your first drawing. So it's that hand-eye coordination that's starting to sort of communicate and travel down that pencil and end up on your page. So I hope you enjoy Ratty this month, and thank you ever so much to Helen for this month's inspiration. That's been brilliant. Next month I am going to show you a Victorian purse within the design. So you're going to have a sketch, a bit of paper engineering and a painting project next month. Anyway, love to see what you're up to. I've been really loving your updates on Facebook, and I was saying to Helen today that every time you upload something, it really puts a spring in my step. I absolutely love to see what you've done, and I love it when you make different decisions and you inspire one another and support one another. It's exactly what this group was set up for, so thank you ever so much.